Their budget, you think they could.
Drive by that, and I think,
Just gave him the word, so.
Always very good.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. It's 9 a.m., Monday, August the 15th. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town Council of Fort Myers Beach. All council members are present. We have our town attorney, our town manager, and our town clerk, as well as several people, citizens here in the audience joining us this morning. So without further ado, we'll start with our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
We meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is the approval of the final agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to request that we move up the committee appointments. They are number E on the administrative agenda, which means they would have to wait through most of the administrative agenda as well as all the public hearings, and we do have folks here that are seeking those appointments. So I'd like to move them up to before the public hearings and maybe after the approval of minutes.
I'll second that.
You don't think they want to hang around for all this fun stuff? Okay, that's fine. I'd like to add one other item. It's in the minutes. We agreed at the last meeting that we were going to do the approval today for the Ann and Dan Hughes Loop down at the Mountain House, and for one reason or another, that didn't make it to the agenda today. So I'd like to add that back in, and we can have a vote on that later, and if there's any other necessary paperwork as far as resolutions or so forth, we can get that done, right, Madam Clerk? Okay.
I'll move to approve the agenda with the two modifications.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. The next item is public comment. Madam Clerk.
Patrick Vanass.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Vanass. I'm here today wearing multiple hats. One as an LPA member, also as a board member for Little League, and lastly as a concerned citizen. So there's a few items I wanted to address with council. First one, with regards to LPA affairs, we just wanted to let you know that we have had several cases come before us recently with regards to variances. Some of those have to do with side setbacks that have been recently changed. We feel that there might be some unintended consequences with those changes, and we've asked staff to maybe go back and re-examine some of the recent cases and look at how the change from a static 7.5 side setback to a 15% setback is maybe causing challenges for irregular lots or smaller lots. So that's one item. The other item with regards to board cab and the budget discussions, just a friendly reminder as a member of the Little League, I'd like to remind everybody and the residents that might be new to this island that Bay Oaks and the Little League fields were funded and built by residents of this communities. So before we were incorporated as a town, the parents got together and did some fundraising, approached Lee County, and had those fields built. There are still numerous families on this island that use those fields on a regular basis. Saturday mornings, I would welcome everybody to come during season and see both fields are being used. Every weekend, we have families ranging from very young to the very old. Grandparents love coming to see their kids play. So when we start discussing, and I don't want to go into the details of some of the discussions at Board Cab, but there's been suggestions of maybe we get rid of the fields for other options. And as a land use planner, one of the things that we look into a lot is how your choices with land decisions affect community, how you build a community, and fields, just like a library, which has been an issue in the past, is community building. We are trying to build a true community that's diverse, that has services for all, for the young and the old. And I'm very concerned when there's discussions about getting rid of those fields and opting for other things instead. So that's second item. My last item as a concerned citizen is somewhat related to Board Cab, but more generally to the budget. I've heard discussions of major increases to all fees across the board. I'm concerned about how those fees are going to be used and where they're going to go to. If they're collected at Bay Oaks, they should stay at Bay Oaks and not be used for other capital projects on the island. Also, I am concerned and question our fiscal management as a town. If we have to go from 1 year where we've been told that the budget was in good shape to all of a sudden we have to increase fees by more than 100%. Obviously, there has to be a reason. We have to be able to justify those increases. We have to explain to the residents of this island exactly how those fees will be used. So that's my last item. And from an LPA standpoint, we were given a budget a few months ago to review and approve and move on to you as a council. The last 2 years, we've asked staff to give us a detailed budget. All we have are top line items with big general numbers for capital expenses, none of the detail as to where it's going to be spent and how it's going to be spent. And we don't get to see the other side where the fees are collected and where they're coming from. We've asked for 2 years to be given more detail. We still haven't gotten it. And I think if we're asked to go through it and review it and pass it on and approve it, we should be given that detail. Also, I think what it would do is it would help you as a council to start vetting this. So if some of these issues of fees or where the money is going to be spent, it would be a public hearing where people can show up, it can be vetted, and then passed on to you. So with that said, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. Next, Madam Clerk.
Sue Vojvodich.
Hello. I'm Sue Vojvodich. I'm looking for an appointment to the LPA. I moved here from New Orleans in 1993, and I bought my house in 1998, and I've lived here full-time ever since. I've recently retired, so I have some time on my hands, and I figured I might be productive on a town advisory committee. And so I'm ready and available at any time.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming in and speaking. Next.
That's all I have signed up. The rest are for the public hearing.
Okay, is there anyone else here this morning that wishes to speak on anything else this morning before the public hearings? No, hearing none, we'll move on.
Just a point, Mayor, you're gonna,
Yes, sir.
are you gonna allow comment from applicants for the LPA?
Yes. When we do that, they're more than welcome to come up. I encourage that. Was that something? Did John cough? Okay. The next item is local achievements and recognitions. Start with you, Councilman Allers.
I have nothing this week, Mayor.
Vice Mayor?
I guess I'd just like to recognize our public works people that are out there sweating and getting things done in the summertime. I drive by and I see them pulling weeds and doing lots of things that I know I can only last for about an hour out there. So I thank them for their service.
I think we all feel that way. Councilman?
Nothing this morning, thank you.
Mr. Veach?
Nothing, I would like to thank council for your consideration during my absence last meetings.
You're more than welcome. Okay, the next item is advisory committee's items and reports. We'll start with Louie Louie. We'll s-
Good morning, Council. My name is Karen Woodson, and I'm representing BORCAB. First off, I'd like to say I agree with everything Patrick said on the BORCAB detail and the Little League fields and that kind of thing. Bay Oaks is basically built for our residents and families. The pool, the Little League, ball fields, the gym, after-school programs. I mean, that facility has grown as a facility for residents and non-residents. I think there was a published statement about membership that I think was very misleading. We went back and looked at the actual utilization of Bay Oaks, and for the pool alone, and this is a time frame from August of 2021 to July of 2022, there were 10,453 check-ins, or basically visits, to our pool. For the actual Bay Oaks Rec Center, between day passes and member check-in, in that time frame were 15,450. Additional pickleball, I was really interested in this, 2,603. That's the highest rate of any sport on this island, I think. We also have instructor-led classes there, and those check-ins were 1,473. So there is a lot of utilization of this area. I think when BORCAB met the first time and saw the rate increases, there was a bit of sticker shock. The rates had not been changed in 11 years, and trying to make up for that lost time, you can't do it all at once. We went back, we approved some things at a first meeting, didn't sit well, called a second meeting, went back, looked at all the rates again. I think we have gotten comfortable with the rates that I know that you have been presented with all of that paperwork. I won't go into each of the details. But I think what our goal is to have a 25-75% flip or split. We're looking at recovery costs. We're not looking to make any kind of money. I mean, this is basically a quality of life amenity for our island. So I think that if you look at the fees that we have proposed the second time around, I think they're much more realistic. We are nearing closer to that 25-75 split. We are not there yet. We'll have to make it up in years to come. Excuse me. But I do think it is something that we need to take a really close look at. This is a very utilized park and recreation center of Ireland. So I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Yes.
Good morning, Karen. Just a couple of things. I watched both of the BORCAB meetings, and I appreciate everybody's efforts. Given your background, I think there's a couple things I think we ought to at least expound upon. Many employer-based health insurance plans have wellness programs that will help offset the costs of fitness facilities. I know my wife's plan will pay up to $35 a month. And I think a lot of people need to take a look at that now that we're starting to charge for the exercise facilities. And I think some of it will cover the pool cost too. Given your background, I've been interested in your comment on that. And I happened to catch Allison Geeson, who oversees all this, before the meeting. And I asked if our facilities were eligible for the Silver Sneakers plan, which is it's quite predominant in our area and quite honestly throughout the country. It's people who have Medicare and have a Medicare Advantage plan have free membership to facilities who are participants in this Silver Sneakers plans, of which there are many around the community. And Allison said that they've tried before, but because there's enough facilities who that are in the program that are nearby, we don't qualify because of our geography. We're just too close to some that are already participating. And I wonder too, and this may be for our town attorney or Roger, I wonder if we could appeal to our member of Congress and or our U.S. senators, because it is a plan that's sort of federally based. I wonder if we could apply for a special exception to be a participant, given our unique status as an island, but also in more challenging during season, our traffic challenges that people can't get on and off the island. I think we may be uniquely situated for a special exception to that Silver Sneakers participation. I just got to thinking about that over the weekend as I was listening to your meetings, and I just didn't know if you had a comment on that, or Allison wanted to comment, or Roger. Just food for thought.
Yeah, I think they're both exceptional ideas. I mean, I'm not sure how long, I've been on BORCAB for 3 years. To my knowledge, we have not checked into either one of those programs again, and why wouldn't we? I think it's, you know, we did look at, used to have corporate memberships on here, and they weren't very well utilized, but at the same time, I don't know how well they were advertised, if we had people going out and calling on corporations or businesses to provide some of that subsidy. You're right, coming from HR, that was a huge part of our benefit packages for every corporation I ever worked at, was the memberships and utilization, and if you went 5 times a month, it was covered free and all of that type of thing. I mean, these are all things that we could look into. I think many of you know we've been trying to resurrect the Friends of Bay Oaks, which unfortunately our 501c3, because it was inactive for so long, we have to start from scratch. And so we are really trying to resurrect that, get active again, but we need volunteers. And so I think the more people that understand what the issues are, the costs are increasing, that's across the board. But the more people that we can get involved, that live on the island, that want to utilize this facility, that have families, the after-school programs are huge. I think all of these should be a focus as we move forward.
Thank you.
Piggybacking on that, I see the town of Fort Myers Beach employee membership was at 50% posted cost, and it shows removing. It's about the middle of the first page.
Yeah,
It seems like if that would be something we would want to keep, that the employees of the town would have as a benefit that they could use our facility at a reduced cost.
yes, and we do, and I don't think that transferred correctly. Roxanne, we'll have to go back and look at that, because we talked about that, and we said that we wanted it either at 50% or at the very minimum, the resident fee versus non-resident.
Okay.
So we'll go back and look at that. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just have something for Roger. During the meeting, Roger, for those that didn't watch, came out and gave an explanation as to the fees that we're talking about. There's a little, I think, misunderstanding as to what the fees are for, what they're going to be used for. And I think you articulated it fairly well in the meeting on Tuesday. If you could, for those that didn't watch or haven't heard, maybe if you could just reiterate those comments for the people that may be watching now, to understand what these fees are in relation to the actual building of the building.
Okay, well, with regard to the building of the building, these fees have nothing to do with that. So let's just be clear about that. I think I was clear about that to BORCAB. Building's not built yet. The fees are not funding the building. In fact, you may recall that on the add-on list that we've been discussing for next year, we're adding in money to the budget for FF&E theoretically, if the council approves that, and to begin in the last quarter of fiscal year 23 to begin to staff for the building. So when I met with BORCAB, I made it very clear to them that if their ultimate decision is that the fees are appropriate and don't need to be adjusted, they could have come here today and just as easily said, we would like to, rather than increase fees, to not go forward with bringing on the staff in the last quarter of the fiscal year and reduce the amount of money for FF&E. So that was an option that, of course, that was available to them and will be available to council when you take up the budget in September. But getting back to the building, most of you may recall that 2/3 of the property that comprised Bay Oaks campus was not owned by the town. And after many years of unsuccessful effort to try to work something out with with our sister agencies, we finally were able to accomplish that. And as part of acquiring the properties from Lee County and the school board, we committed to do certain things. And we showed them the master plan for the campus. We showed them the fields, the 2 fields. We showed them the buildings. We showed them the playgrounds. We showed them the parking area. We showed them everything. And predicated on that, they decided to do the land swaps with the town. I think you all know we secured a $10 million loan to pay for improvements at 3 locations, Times Square, Bayside Park, and the biggest project, only because it grew through the advocacy of the Board Cab Committee, from an entrance lot project which is currently being constructed. If you drove past it this morning, probably on the way to Town Hall, to a community center and redoing the fields and adding other amenities, such as pickleball courts. So that makes up the bulk of the $10 million. Now, while it's true that we're not sure that will be enough money considering the construction inflation, the fees, and we're talking about generating another $150,000 in fees just because Allison's operating costs have gone up $150,000. The last couple of years, the council has stepped in and added money to her budget via the add-on list, but after it being sort of a recurring thing, it became very obvious that we needed to do something to her budget. And in my viewpoint, and at least I think in BORCAP's viewpoint, at least some of the fees need to be adjusted. So that's how we got to be here today. But the people who are trying to draw a line between the dot of the building and the dot of the fee adjustments, there's no line.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Karen.
Mr. Mayor, before we leave it, I just wanted to see if would my colleagues support me in asking our town attorney to formally inquire with the federal government and the Silver Sneakers program as to, first of all, why we were denied eligibility. It sounds like it was a geography issue, but to also see if there's room for a request for a special exception, given our unique traffic challenges on the island and our geography as an island. And I wondered if we could just direct our town attorney to research that and to potentially get in touch with either our member of Congress or our 2 U.S. senators to get some help in requesting a special exception. Because if we got eligibility for Silver Sneakers, I got to tell you, and there's a large percentage of our island would be eligible for free membership for both the pool and the workout facility, and through their Medicare Advantage program. So just, is everybody comfortable with that? Because I don't want to just leave that hanging, and maybe we'll have a directive to the town attorney to sort of probe that a little further.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, great. John, if you can hear us, that would be great if you could take a look at that.
Yeah, Mayor and members of the council, I really think that the correspondence or the inquiry should come from the manager or from his staff. We will assist in searching and researching why possibly the initial designation was not given, and if there's a waiver or some other process that can be invoked or asked for additional review to get that designation.
That's fine, John. Yeah, whatever makes sense.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Now, one thing that came up in conversations I've had with the town manager is that part of the future expenses of Bay Oaks is now having an additional building that needs to be staffed. Because now you have the old gym and we'll have the new gym, and if there's gonna be a building that's generally open during normal hours. I was wondering if Bay Oaks has ever looked into maybe limiting some of the utilizations of the old gym so that we don't need that additional staffing, because that's a pretty considerable cost.
It was looked at, I think what the discussion is that all of the offices at the gym would then transfer over to the new building, because the new building would be more of the administrative side, it would be the social side, it would be the quiet gym side, or quiet like for yoga, that type of thing. And what the gym then would turn into would be more of the hardcore workout facility and the basketball and the more aerobics classes and that kind of thing that would only require a small check-in area, but the rest of the staff, for the most part, would be moved to the administrative building. That was the outline from years ago that we talked about.
Meaning the building would only be open when there was a class?
No, that they would still have, they would have people on site, but it wouldn't be that all the offices, it wouldn't be dual offices, if you will. It wouldn't be dual staff. They would have maybe 1 or 2 people on the gym side, and then the rest of the offices and that type of thing would be in the administrative building. That's what we had talked about before. But I don't think there's a final decision on it. Roger, correct me if I'm wrong.
So, right now, and I don't have the add-on list in front of me, but I believe we're talking about, to staff the new building, we're talking about adding 4 positions. And again, we were talking about bringing them on, that staff on the fourth quarter of fiscal year '23 to begin to get those people trained, so when buildings open, we can come up and running. We're gonna look at certain access control improvements to the existing Bay Oaks building so that hopefully that building can be staffed by 1 person.
So what are the 4 people for if you need 1 staffing for the,
Well, again, we're hoping that this building will be the hub of the community center, of the community. We have to have programs, and we can go over the actual staffing list when we have the budget discussions in September, and of course, you can make modifications to that if you don't think it's right. Allison can come here and explain why she thinks she needs those positions to you, and we can have that discussion then.
okay. So the idea is more, you expect more utilization with the new building?
Correct.
Well,
I do.
I hope everybody in this room hopes that as great as it is to have everybody here this morning, that becomes the hub of the community, not the council chambers.
So, and one of the question, when I was watching one of the board cab meetings, there was a discussion, or not a discussion, but maybe a passing comment about some hesitation of going forward with the new building. Was that just a passing comment, or was there some kind of consensus among board cab?
There was no consensus, to my knowledge, among board cab. It was a passing conversation. There was a letter to the editor about Anita. And I don't think there was ever, I know for a fact, there was no consensus on it. And there was also discussion about maybe the timing of it with the construction costs and inflation and all of those kind of things, but really nothing came out of that. And as Roger said, it's 2 different paths. It's building a new building, and it's the fees that are increasing for the existing space that we have now based on costs.
Yeah, they're
So-
mutually exclusive from one another, and there was a letter to the editor, and I think even an email circulated to town council, if I remember correctly. And there was a misconception or erroneous conclusion being reached in that, and so when I was at the board cab meeting, made it clear that there is not a line between the 2 issues. They're independent, can both be decided on their own merits, and one's not tied to the other.
Yeah, another question now, is it premature in the fee schedule to be thinking about fees for the new capabilities that the new building would have? Things like the amphitheater, the other stage inside?
Well, I think I've been pretty clear with the committee that we need to think about programming and how we're going to best utilize that building, and of course, with those uses comes the associated fees if appropriate.
Okay, but there's been no conversation yet?
No, we have not had those conversations. I know Allison is looking into the programs and things that would be offered there. They have not been laid out or presented to board cab yet, so that would be a conversation for future. So the fees that we're looking at right now are based strictly on what we have at Bay Oaks right now, and utilization numbers and trying to get the membership numbers up and that type of thing, and covering some costs, like I said, the 25 to 75% split.
Right, so there's no magic about that, and we talked about this at board cab, can't really remember, that has always sort of been our unwritten goal to try to split the operations of building at Bay Oaks and the pool at the cost of running those two operations at 75% taxpayer, property taxpayer support, and 25% fees. And that balance has gotten out of whack because the fees have not been adjusted, and we've tried to hold back from increasing the fees, but we've just gotten to the point where either we have to adjust the programming or services because we're facing the same inflation that everyone else is, or we have to adjust the fees. Or we have to take the money from something else. Those are the three options that we'll be discussing in September.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much, Karen.
All right, thank you.
Next is, we have Steve Johnson, the chairman of the Marine Resources and Environmental Group.
Spit it out, Mayor. It's a mouthful these days, right?
I'm not used to the new acronym yet.
Exactly, right. Well, we pronounce it the same way, so Murph will be just fine. Well, actually, since all this budget talk is going on, we're actually here with our hat in hand. Our understanding is that tentatively we've been budgeted at $5,000 for Murph, and we had two real major initiatives here that sum up to about $10,000, which was this past year's budget level. And we're here really just for your consideration in final budgeting to fund these two initiatives. First is the Murph pop-up. I think you're all very, very familiar with that program. I think from a cost-benefit ratio, it's through the roof. You know, for the few dollars it takes to run those, there's 70, 80 of these exhibits. Really, it's outreach, it's educational to residents and their guests. As well as it's, from a marketing perspective, the town should recognize that it's also drives attendance really to our other municipal facilities. And as we talk about Bay Oaks and the Mountain House, we're always trying to drive attendance to those facilities. So we would hope that we could continue to fund that, as again, it's a worthwhile effort. Brings in just a ton of nonprofit volunteers, hundreds of hours of volunteerism. In addition, we were not able to complete our new Murph brochure this year. This piece is, the current one is completely outdated, and we'd like to use it really for a resource to be passed out at the pop-up booths, but also there's a reference guide in there. And again, it's going to highlight the Mountain House, Newton Park, Bay Oaks as well, so it'll be used as a marketing tool throughout the town. So that's the first item. Second item is, any questions on that? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Just a couple of things that I've noticed in watching this is that with the pop-up, initially, when doing the pop-up, that Murph members would go to organizations that had materials they could hand out, and they would have some in a box somewhere and they give it to them. But now we've been doing it so long and it's been so popular that they have to go through and print more of them, so they're asking us to pay for the cost of doing that. And the idea of the brochure is to kind of displace some of these things and be more specific about our island into what we're trying to pass out and tell people. And some of the real popular ones, really kids seem to be a big target. So coloring books, that kind of stuff are very popular.
Steve, just for a minute, for the folks at home that might be watching or listening, we all know what the pop-up is, but can you give a 50-second definition of what these pop-ups do?
Sure. The pop-up is a Murph program that's obviously supported by the town of Fort Myers Beach, and it's essentially a 10 by 10 foot booth that pops up at different points around the island. So whether it be Times Square, Bay Oaks, Newton Park, but essentially there's a lot of materials there, and it's staffed by one Murph member, mandatory, and then also members from other nonprofits in the area, the Community Foundation, Lover's Key, Master Gardeners, Garden Club, whatever it might be, Audubon, and they discuss stewardship issues and items. They talk about what's going on around town. They send people to, like I said, to a lot of it is families, and they want to know what's going on around town, so they'll send them to the Mountain House, Bay Oaks, talk about the pool, and things like that. So. And again, it pops up everywhere. We run on average 6 per month, which is really an effort. You know, setting this thing up, there's just a crew of volunteers that are just invaluable that help set it up and run it every month. So there's your elevator speech.
Thank you.
Just a couple quick questions for you, Steve. Of those brochures and coloring books and other things, roughly, how many do you think you hand out in a year at those pop-ups?
Thousands. I mean, we touch thousands and thousands of people that come through there every visit. So it's hard to say. I mean, there's just
Quite a few.
cases of them. Yeah, quite a few. I mean, Jennifer's garage is just loaded with boxes that are donated for the most part. But
Have you guys reached out to any of the local print shops to see if they'd be interested in like a partnership to maybe do some free printing? You know, get their logo on it or something too?
we haven't, but we're certainly considering that just because of the issue that Councilman Veach brought up, and that is that some of our sources are drying up. So they had a bunch of collateral, and now we've literally emptied their shelves, and now they're saying, well, to give you more, we're gonna have to pay to print a bunch more. So we'd be happy to share them with you at a cost, and we're thinking, well, from an alternative standpoint, is there a better partnership that we can pursue to try to keep costs low?
All right, thank you.
So thanks for that input, yep. So that's item number 1, shall I continue?
Continue, sir.
Okay, this next one's the easy one. We had brought this back to you up in May, but essentially, really over the period of the COVID times, we had the Lee County Extension Service Master Gardeners inventory all of the Category 1 species, invasive species on the island. So essentially, they wandered every single street on the island, and from a public perspective, they identified invasive species. And they logged all this information. We've got it in a master database now. And the ask simply is that what we'd like to do is actually publish it on our website, in the environmental section of the website, just to more or less inform people that don't know what kind of vegetation they have, that are residents and property owners, that it does exist, and basically share the benefit of all that work that was done by the Master Gardeners. And I think a key here is that along with that information, there's a disclaimer from the Master Gardeners that said it's possible there's been a misidentification of species, but also the follow-up would be for any property owners with questions, they are directed to the Master Gardener Horticulture Help Desk, which is manned Monday through Friday, and they would then provide any information, answer any questions, as well as take appointments on a volunteer basis to come out and actually evaluate your property and make recommendations if you wanted to pursue any kind of activity based on the information that we're providing. So the important thing, there is no involvement with town staff, so that should just free them up to do their normal activities.
Steve, quick question on that. I like the idea. Would you be including, for those of us that don't have a green thumb and couldn't grow something if they tried, can you include pictures with it so I would, for instance, know exactly what I'm looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, absolutely.
The
I think-
description is great, but then I'm gonna have to go look up what it looks like anyway, so.
Right, I believe there's about 12 major ones that are identified, and so we can include that information, at least to show you, to go out in your yard and say, okay, I didn't know that was invasive. So that's great,
I personally would really appreciate it.
great feedback, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to see this happen.
Yep, okay.
Me and I need you.
Yep, so basically with consensus, we can go ahead and do that? Okay, well, we'll work that out with the PIO then, and that's it.
Roger, stay here for a minute, Steve. How have we been funding the MRF's operation so far, just on a as-need basis, or?
Well, we've given committees allocations. I believe their allocation in the past has been $5,000, if my memory serves me correctly. We're proposing to fund them again at $5,000, but we have a amount in case any committee has a project that puts them over the $5,000. We've given each committee 5, and that's, I believe, $4,440 or something like that. So it's almost a 10 they're asking for if the council gives them that extra
Right.
overrun money, if you will.
And MRF has generated some donations from other organizations because of the pop-up work.
That doesn't seem like too much money for the bang for the buck that you're getting for it, so.
Good.
Can I just mention about the invasive, the list of properties is currently on the town's website. So you can look up, we don't say like, Mr. Jones, you're in violation, but we have a reference that you can see that list to see that if someone wants to inquire and see if their property was identified, we currently have that. So we could work with everybody to augment that.
Roger, since you brought that up, can you let people know what that means? should they?
Yeah, that means
the
that,
homeowner wanna come in
yeah,
and
so
do-
we're, so if, what we say on that list is, here's a list of properties that potentially have invasive species on it. And if you get a building permit, by the way, we're gonna make you, as part of that permit requirement, to remove that. So it's not where we're sending notices of violation to people. It's just where if you're curious whether or not your property was identified, you can go to that link, click on it, look up your address and see if it's listed.
Yeah, we're
But we
complete-
could augment all that with what Mr.
Yeah, we're
Johnson.
completely unaware of that. I thought we had some challenges to actually put it on because it's potentially public information and,
Well, the way, the workaround we did was, rather than sort of list my house per se.
Right.
It was to just say that, here's a list of properties that were identified, and if you want to go look and see who it is, you can. So it's not kind of putting people on report.
okay, well, we'll work that out then with you.
Okay.
Sound good? Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Council.
Thanks very much. Thanks for all the work you guys do. Okay, we'll move on. The next item is the approval of the minutes for August 1st Town Council meeting and August 4th Management and Planning session. Are there any changes or corrections? I have one in the management, I think it was the management and planning session. I made a comment about the tax rate, and it says he discussed bringing services in-house over the years and noted the millage rate had never exceeded 1%. I think what I said was it never exceeded has never exceeded 1 mil. Just a little tiny correction there. Is there any other, are there any other corrections or additions, or? If not, is there a motion to approve minutes?
I'll move to approve both sets of minutes as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're gonna substitute, in here, we're gonna do the appointments to the committees. What we have is we have an opening on the LPA, the Local Planning Agency, and we have an appointment to the Historic Preservation Board. We have 3 people that have submitted their names for the LPA ahead of time, and then we were presented a fourth one today. So if any of those folks are here, Mr. Ekman or Mr., what was the other name of this fellow? I know the lady. Mr. Ekman? Yeah, come on up and say hello, if you wouldn't.
Good morning, Mayor Murphy and council members. My name is Doug Ekman.
Morning.
Thank you. I live at 120 Sable Drive, Fort Myers Beach. My residence is the only property that I own on Estero Island or in the town of Fort Myers Beach. My qualifications are that I'm a registered professional engineer in Florida. I'm a board-certified environmental engineer. I'm a board-certified water resource engineer. I was elected to Fellow of the American Society of Civil Engineers. In my professional life, I've worked for town of Fort Myers Beach sometime in the past, but also cities like Marco Island, Sanibel. Currently, I'm working to create a sewer project on Captiva. One of my objectives and interests is to bring my experience and knowledge to my community, which I really like. Fort Myers Beach, I think it has a very unique characteristic. To me, it's part maritime, part beach resort, part residential, and I have a personal interest in sustainable, resilient, and environmentally responsible development. And therefore, I ask for your appointment to the local planning agency. Thank you. questions.
You're being humble, sir. You're also an MBA. You forgot
Yes,
to,
sir.
you
Yeah.
forgot to say
I
that.
have an MBA degree.
Yeah, I was impressed by that combination.
I don't have a question, but I guess I'd just like to chime in because I am the liaison to the Anchorage Advisory Committee. I'd like to let you know that Mr. Ekman is a member of that committee. And I always look at past performance is often an indicator of future performance. And Mr. Ekman has been a valued member of that committee. He shows up, he participates in a positive and helpful fashion. So just so that you all can share in my experience with him.
Very good.
And now also, one thing he commented on that we've talked about in the past was that his involvement in trying to put a sewer system into Captiva. And, you know, this displaces septic systems. And so you could probably argue that his efforts in that manner has had a more beneficial impact on water quality than anything we've done.
No doubt.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ekman. Thank you for coming. Is Mr. Sudduth here? Yes, sir, come on up.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself and
Sure.
say hello. Name's Don Sudduth. I've been visiting Fort Myers Beach since I was 8, so about 41 years. So I've watched a lot of the change happen over the years. Been a full-time year-round resident since 2016. Again, like to get, like others, would like to get more involved in the community and what some of the growth and try to find some balance between environmental sustainability, et cetera. You see my qualifications. I have an engineering undergrad, executive MBA. I'm an Indiana person like Mr. Adelholt from Purdue. I've been in the utility business for 27 years, telecom, water, sewer, electric, gas, wind, and other district energy sources of power in the U.S. and Canada, also extending up to Alaska. So lots of utility experience like Mr. Ekman, and hopefully I said your name right. Apologize if I didn't. Again, that's who I am, and want to get involved in the community as best I can. And seems like the LPA is a good place to get involved based on my background and experience. Thank you.
You're right. Thanks so much. This is very unusual to have 2 engineers and 2 MBAs. The quality of the candidates is really phenomenal. Thank you any questions for Don? Does anybody have a question? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Susan, was there anything you wanted to add to your earlier comments? No? Okay. All right, thanks. And also, Joe Kirkbride is here this morning. Joe, you want to come up?
My name's Joe Kirkbride. My wife and I moved to the island, purchased a condominium on the south end of the island about 2 years ago. My background is in finance. I too have an MBA, so maybe they're passing them out there. I don't know.
Is anybody here that doesn't have an MBA?
Yeah. I want to get involved in future of the island. We love it here, absolutely love it. We're not going anywhere else. As the mayor knows, I was involved in the audit committee for several months until a medical situation forced me to resign from that obligation. That has been cured, I guess, or taken care of, so that I'm not anticipating any short tenure if I'm elected or if I'm appointed to the LPA.
Good for you, Joe. Glad you're feeling better.
Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Kirkbride? Okay. Thank you, Joe, for coming in. Okay, those are the applicants for the LPA appointment. I guess we'll vote.
Which, all 4 or 3?
4, right?
I just say, though, it really is an excellently qualified group of people, and there's a lot of other opportunities if this one doesn't pan out for you.
That's true. Good point, Bill. There's, and there may very well be another opening on that LPA here coming up. You never know, but you might want to just keep your eye on that, whoever doesn't get appointed today. But we surely appreciate your interest and thank you for coming in this morning. Okay?
Go to the next item, we'll count these.
Okay. The next appointment is not as much drama. The appointment to the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, and that we have Michael Yost has submitted his application for that. Mike, are you here? He's not here. Okay. Well, since Mike being the only applicant, is there a motion to approve Mike to the board?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Mike.
I'm ready, Mayor.
You ready? Okay, Madam Clerk.
With 3 votes, Douglas Ekman has been appointed, or wins the appointment.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations, Doug, and we look forward to great things. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the other applicants. And as we said, Councilman Veach also said there will be other opportunities for this board and other boards coming up. So please, you're very talented, and this is the problem we face here when there are more applicants than there are positions. We hate to turn people away, but please apply again. We would love to have you on these committees. So thanks so much. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on. The next item is the first public hearing.
Second.
Well, it's the second reading of, but it's the first one today that, okay, it's ordinance 22-1, the sea turtle conservation. This is the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 22-11 entitled, "An Ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending Article 5 of Chapter 32 of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Fort Myers Beach entitled Sea Turtle Conservation, to provide for a tinted glass opacity requirement for all new construction and all renovations, retrofitting or window replacements to existing buildings to reduce the inside to outside light transmittance value, providing for severability, codification, scrivener's errors, conflicts of law, and an effective date." So we'll,
Just a question, Mayor, before we continue.
Sure.
I would like to offer an amendment to this, and I don't know when's the appropriate time to do that.
I don't either. Victor?
Well, you can move to amend the ordinance, if that's your decision. I'll defer to John at this point on the second reading.
Why don't you tell us what you have, Bill, and then we'll,
Okay, this actually came to me indirectly from one of the builders. The amendment that I'd like to propose is that before a permit is approved or a certificate of occupancy is granted, that the appropriate blinds are installed.
what does that mean, appropriate blind? Just the,
That they have sufficient blackout blinds. There's been a lot of conversation about window tinting versus blinds, but if there's no blinds installed, then the percentage of transmittance becomes an issue. And it seems like it's part of any process. You know, blinds usually put in. I know in my experience, the one time I built the new house, after some of my neighbors were complaining, I put blinds up. But maybe it wouldn't require that kind of action. They just, blinds need to be put up in order to have that job, that window replacement or window installation be considered complete.
okay. Anybody have any comments on that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 22-11 as written without that amendment.
Well, we've got a little ways to go before we're gonna do this. We have to have a public hearing and listen to the public and so forth. We're not quite there.
My bad.
We're not quite there yet. Vice Mayor, were you leaning in?
Well, I was leaning in, but I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time based on the fact that we need to take public comment and things first.
Okay, well then.
I think,
wanna hold off?
I think my timing is correct on this, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Okay.
John or our other counsel here, I'm not necessarily opposed to this amendment, but I want to make sure that if this amendment is adopted, because of the notice issues we've had before that delayed the adoption of the ordinance, would this cause any issues with respect to if it was adopted as part of the ordinance today? Would it cause any delay in the enactment of the ordinance because of the challenges that we faced earlier?
No.
Okay, thank you.
That was a very short answer for John.
Yeah, that's a record, John.
Wow, yeah.
I would also recommend that you take public comment before, and close the public comment process before taking or proposing any amendments.
Yes, yeah, I had planned on that.
And,
Okay,
and my thing, just in the matter of transparency, to make sure that people are gonna make a public comment, they know what I'm proposing
sure.
to respond to it.
Okay, is there any other discussion with the council before we open this up? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you have a list going here?
I do.
Okay, you go right ahead.
All right, first up is Eve Haverfield. After Eve will be Cindy Johnson.
Uh-oh, I know what that is.
Just, these are from this morning, from this morning's dig. So, Eve Haverfield with Turtle Time, good morning.
Morning, Eve.
I'm here today to comment on the issue that's before you regarding retreating from the 15% window tint. It has been well documented that 45% inside to outside transmittance is not effective enough to prevent nesting and hatching sea turtles from disorienting. My advice is that the decision to revert to 45% be put off until the fall, and here is why. FWC is conducting tests and having discussions about changing their recommendations about window tinting. There will be more information regarding other tints that block light effectively when the results of the FWC study becomes available. And as you all know, when you have better information, you make better decisions. So I would urge you to delay the decision regarding the tint until the recommendations from the state are clarified. You may have other viable choices then as well. I also would like to say that Chad has made significant improvements by abating exterior and common element lighting violations on Fort Myers Beach. But sadly, imploring people to close their drapes has not been effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Eve.
And they're making noises in here.
Cindy Johnson. Up after Cindy will be Bill Althoff.
Good morning, Cindy Johnson, resident and Turtle Time volunteer. Hope you all are doing well this morning, Council. So now the big philosophical question is, why is there a 45 tint requirement in the model ordinance? It's because people can't consistently close their blinds and drapes. And we see that on a nightly basis. And you could too if you walked out on the beach. So yes, there's been great improvement since the beginning of the year. There are several properties that are working extremely hard to get that job done every night. But still, we live on a transient island. We have a lot of rentals, and it's not consistent enough to help us. We have 7 disorientations so far this year, and that is with Turtle Time volunteers and Chad trying to inform people if we catch lights on right before, the time that a nest is due, to be extra cautious. It still happens. So this is a big problem for us. On May 16th, Dr. Trindle from the FWC, the biological administrator of the Imperiled Species Group, wrote to the town to inform them that based on our experience, both from lighting surveys and disorientation data, now this is the science, this is not how anyone's feeling about anything. 45% transmittance does not adequately block interior light from the sea turtle nesting beach. So how can we knowingly place that number 45 back in our ordinance as something that someone can put in their windows? And July 27th, Dr. Trindle wrote again, of course, some of the stuff that Eve mentioned. The FWC is currently working with the fenestration industry to investigate how tints darker than 45% affect hatchling orientation. The FWC are still working on testing hatchling orientation when exposed to glass with different tint levels. These studies are ongoing. However, the products provided by the fenestration industry include a number of tints that are not as dark as 15%, but appear to block light effectively. The results of this study should be available by this fall. And she wrote, it would be prudent to wait for those results before specifying 45% tint in this document. Now, disorientations, I think it's prudent too. I think we should wait to put correct language into our ordinance. Disorientations are not the only value to look at when we're talking about non-compliance of our lighting ordinance. The other thing is that female nesting turtles may not nest on our beach. They may come up and not nest on our beach because we have too much light on our beach. And so please keep all that in mind, and I hope that we use our science and use the facts to write a good ordinance this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Altoff, and after Bill will be John R. King.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and Town Council.
Morning.
I left my glasses home. I'm here today to support your decision to replace the .15 glass requirement and encourage your continued efforts to adopt the statewide guideline of .45. Over the last 90 days, the council has voted multiple times to approve the change based on the input from the glass industry, contractors, builders, and a plethora of informed property owners. Everyone here applauds this council's efforts to protect the endangered turtles. Please keep in mind the property owners are also involved and supportive of this.
You're just not being picked up.
Our association, like others, has been willing and proactive to support the town's lighting requirements. We have signed our properties. We have asked all owners to abide by the light rules as well as pull the shades at night. The combined efforts between the town and the residents, it is working and can help reduce the disorientations. The current ordinance of .15 reflects a financial hardship to the owners who wish to update their glass by paying the exorbitant cost. Our project costs are in the range of $8,000 to $20,000 more expensive to adopt the .15 glass. Owners have called the .15 glass a quote-unquote forever dark windows, requiring lights to be on even during the day, and that causes the higher electric bills. Please keep in mind, once installed, the tinted windows are installed year-round, not just during the turtle season. This means that the electric meter is running all year, and in this period of high inflation, higher cost on everything from the gas to food to the electric fees, this council can lessen one financial burden by replacing the existing tint requirement immediately. I realize this is an emotional issue. Everybody wants to protect and support hatchlings. But this council has got to make the decision based on facts. And when you take a look at the facts, you look at the whole problem. Every coastal county in Florida is .45. Every coastal county. Lee County is also .45. The total number of nestings last year in Lee County for the two turtles that make it to this side was 1.75%. That's less than 2% of all the nestings statewide. Yet Fort Myers Beach has had this .15 requirement that has not been adopted anywhere else. Looking forward, I understand the FWC is working with the glass industry to study the turtle disorientations and how different tinting levels can affect the hatchling's behaviors. Effective studies and testings take time and arrive at a conclusion based on scientific facts. Please correct the existing ordinance now, the FWC, to align with the FWC conclusions whenever that decision is made. Otherwise, you're costing your residents undue financial harm at this point. In summary, everybody wants as many hatchlings to make it to the water as possible. The joint efforts between the property owners and the town is working. Basically, I can't read my handwriting. I guess that's about it. Sorry.
I know the feeling.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
John R. King. After Mr. King is Mary Rose Spalletta.
Good morning. John R. King, Islands End Condo Association Board of Directors, 8400, 8402, and 8403 Estero Boulevard. I believe it was early March when I and other condo associations stood before you in an attempt to get a rollback on the window tinting from 15% to 45%. This has been a long process, and it was delayed again a couple weeks ago for this amendment that could be introduced that came from town staff who heard it from an island builder, who heard it from a friend, who heard it from another. Oh, that's the old disc jockey me, I'm sorry. The amendment, as Mr. Veach had talked about, it would require that appropriate blinds are installed before the permit is approved as complete. What are appropriate blinds? If I have appropriate blinds, why do I need tinted windows? And then you've heard from Turtle Time today that even if you have appropriate blinds, people aren't using them correctly. We've heard the glass industry representative state that there is no science behind the 15% tinting, and that this standard is what FWC came up with after consulting with the auto glass industry. This issue has been sidetracked long enough. I urge passage of the second reading of the Sea Turtle Ordinance, bring it back in line with the state guidelines of 45%, allow those that have delayed their window and sliding glass door replacement projects the opportunity to move forward. Thank you.
Mary Rose Spalletta, and then after Ms. Spalletta is Jen Hatfield.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Morning.
Yeah, this is a different perspective. I usually stand over there. I'm Mary Rose Spalletta.
Nice to see you.
It's good to be here. But I don't know that my message is going to be what necessarily people want to hear, because this yellow sign is what we put on every turtle nest. And what it states is that it really isn't up to us. It's federal and state law that we have a responsibility to protect our turtles. It isn't us. It's what we must do. First of all, the reason we're here is the ocean. We have a beautiful, beautiful beach, and it's clean and it's healthy. And the only reason is because we have sea turtles. And Florida is now #1 in the world for producing live, healthy sea turtles. It used to be Oman, but because of all the trouble they have over there, their numbers have dropped by 80 or 90%. It is up to us. And whoever says that we're only a very small percentage of the sea turtles that are hatched and thrive, I take issue with that. I don't think that's true. When you look at the number of nests that we have on Fort Myers Beach, and then add to that Bonita Beach, Sanibel, and all of our sister keys, islands, we produce a great number of hatchlings. And the only reason we do that is because people have been more than vigilant for 30 years. And right now, we are not living up to our responsibility. The fact that we have disorientations that result in multiple hatchlings dying every year, in fact, this year, shows that we are not. So I therefore strongly urge us to take a stand, and even if the rest of the world is not doing the right thing, we should do the right thing. We know that lighting affects turtles. Females come up on our beach. If they encounter lights, they turn around and do not lay eggs. We call that a false crawl. We have over 150 of them this year. We know that hatchlings, when they come out of the dark of their of their cave, it almost is, they react to the light. And if there is light coming from people's apartment because without knowing it, they left to go out to dinner and did not close their curtains, the animals are disoriented. And they use all of their energy floundering around going the wrong way and end up dead. We cannot afford to do, it's wrong for us to do that. So my point is we should adopt the strictest rules we can. And yes, I know it is a burden on homeowners, but with every privilege comes a responsibility. Those of us who have the privilege of living on the beach must live up to the responsibility of caring for our beach. And in reality, the turtles do not ask all that much. Good grief, give them darkness, stay out of their way. Thank you for listening to
Mary
me.
Rose, just
Yes.
stay there for 1 second. Since you brought it up, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Hickory Island, Sanibel, Captiva, what's their requirement for this glass business? Do you know?
I don't know. Ray, I'm only thinking of us. I really don't
No, but I'm
care
just
about the
curious
rest of
as
the
to what
world.
our neighbors are doing since.
I think the Bonita really doesn't have a lighting problem. They don't have to worry about it because they don't have the yeah, but somehow they have no lighting problem there. Eve is the one who would know about this. And all I'm saying is us, and I think we should step up to the plate and do the right thing.
I appreciate
It's the law. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Next.
Jen Hatfield.
It's not, okay. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Jennifer Hatfield, and I represent the Fenestration and Glazing Industry Alliance. Thank you. And I know I emailed some of you prior to the June meeting. I couldn't attend that one in person, so hope that information was helpful. We urge you to adopt the proposed changes that are before you today. We've provided you valuable information, we hope, in the last few months about what products are available, background on the 15% visual transmittance, and how we are collaborating with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission on testing to determine an appropriate VT range for turtles that also can provide adequate options for builders and consumers to utilize. One of the speakers said to write a good ordinance based on science and facts. That's what they asked of you. Your current ordinance is not based on science and facts. The 15% came from the auto industry. We were not, as an industry, targeting 15%. In order to meet the 15%, you will have to go down to at least 9% VT. And so what we've been doing is collaborating with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission to help, explain to them how our products work, the type of products we have. We sent them samples, and I'm excited that they have, completed the initial study. Now they're working to analyze the data. As somebody had mentioned in the email from Dr. Trindle, they were already noting tents higher than 15% that work. And I think people forget, the ordinance says 45% or less. If everybody keeps talking about 45 and 15 exactly, 45% or less. And guess what? The industry doesn't target 45% exactly. A lot of times to meet that, you're gonna have to put in like a 33% VT or a 21% VT. And we are looking forward to the results of those studies. But unfortunately, if you wait, you're now requiring this extra burden to homeowners where there's no proven science. So we would urge you to move forward with the 45% or less. It's what the rest of the state has, and come back when those studies are available. And although they may be available in an initial form in a couple of months, we don't know if that's going to yield other studies to be done. We've already talked to them about doing a couple of rounds. We want to provide scientific information that we eventually will believe will go into the model ordinance that all jurisdictions can look to. So I just think by postponing, you're really just kicking down the can of the road, and you're continuing to have an ordinance that isn't based on science either. We encourage you to pass that. We support data-driven best turtle management practices to ensure Florida continues to be the nesting site, as someone mentioned, for these wonderful creatures. I'll just say, as a Floridian myself, and as someone who was a University of Florida law student, I did their environmental law program, got to go to Costa Rica and help measure these magnificent creatures and count their eggs. So believe me, I want us to protect our turtles, but we have to make sure we're also basing this on science. So I'd urge your support for the ordinance in front of you today. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
You say your last name was Hatfield?
Hatfield, yes.
Did you all ever fix up that business with the McCoys yet, or?
My neighbor growing up was a McCoy, too.
Right in the family.
Got along great.
All right. Well, therein lies the problem. We have one speaker that says there's no science to prove it, and then we have a previous speaker that says there is science to prove it. So there's obviously a difference of opinion here. Next, Madam Clerk.
That's all I have signed up.
No more. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak that has not spoken yet? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment portion of this and bring it back to the council. Now, Councilman Allers, if you're in the mood to make a motion, you're more than welcome to.
All right, I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. I will make a motion to approve ordinance 22-11 as written, and not to include Councilman Veach's amendment.
Is there a second?
Well, I'm not quite sure you can make a motion like that. I mean, you can. I'm not sure you could make a motion sort of under the premise that an amendment might be offered. It hasn't formally been offered yet. I mean, I would assume you would just move the ordinance, and then if there's an amendment, we would debate the amendment.
We could go that route, or, I mean, we pretty much know where Councilman Veach is going with this. I'm good either way.
Yeah, just procedurally, though, it seems like the amendment ought to have an opportunity to stand on its own, and then we would vote on final passage. I'm just thinking through this.
I fully expected there to be discussion after the motion, so that's why I made it that way, but I'd be certainly happy to amend it.
Just kind of parliamentarily, so if you second his motion, and then I add the amendment, then the motion maker has to agree to the amendment. Right?
That is correct. So the way, if I may, to everyone's point, I think the appropriate motion, as I understand it, is to approve the ordinance as written. If it gets a second, then it's that motion is subject to any friendly amendment. But if there is any amendment, both the maker of the motion and the person who seconded it would have to agree to amend the ordinance. If they don't agree, then the proposed amendment or the offered amendment fails.
So if you second his motion, then we're precluding an amendment, because he's already stated.
No, you can,
Practically speaking,
can always be made if it's not accepted by the motion maker and the seconder, then it does not, it dies at that point.
Well, as a practical matter, though, he's already stated that he won't accept an amendment, so he's not going to change his opinion on that. So it is preemptively preventing an amendment. It seems to me that it flies in the face of the intent of Robert's Rules of Order.
But just to help you along, perhaps procedurally, you can discuss the amendment and bifurcate it and deal with that, and then take up the main motion if you want to. Is that correct, John or Victor?
Yeah, I mean, the motion to amend can be bifurcated, but eventually at some point in time, it would get incorporated into the, would have to be accepted and voted on as part of the motion, or if no one seconds this for discussion purposes, then someone can make a motion to approve as amended.
And that's where we are at this point. There has not been a second thus far. So unless someone wants to second this for discussion, we'll go on to another motion. Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion dies for lack of a second. So.
Then I would, Mayor, with your permission.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to make a motion that we amend ordinance 2211 to include a provision that the appropriate blinds have to be installed before a CO or the permit is approved.
I'll second.
It's been seconded. Discussion.
Now I'll discuss as to why I didn't want that in there.
Okay.
One, I don't think the town is in the business of being an interior designer. As it's been stated here several times, people aren't closing their blinds the way it is. If we have a 15% or even a 45%, you're basically saying you can't get an approval or a sign-off if we don't get to come in and see what your blinds are. I don't think that's the government's job. The government's job is to protect the sea turtles. I 100% agree with that. But it's also not the, I don't know how many times I could say it. We shouldn't be in the business of going in to approve someone's blinds. And the reason I have an issue with that being in there is because if I have an issue with that amendment and I vote no on this ordinance because that's in there, then this ordinance fails and it stays at 15%. Is that correct, John?
Not necessarily.
I think that is correct.
Well,
And to me, that is almost like a poison pill. It's almost getting me to vote no on something that I believe should be passed.
Mr. Allers, you have the option of offering a motion differently stated than the one that you offered.
Understood.
So
I
if you
just wanted to
vote
get to the
against,
deci- I just wanted
if
to get
you
to the
vote against it, you still have the option of offering another motion. You're not prohibited from it.
My point is if that motion gets voted on and passes, then
And it passed, yes.
it passed, and it's what I did. I think I hope I'm explaining myself correctly. With that amendment in there, to me, it comes across as a poison pill. It forces me into a decision. Either I have to say I agree with you allowing people to get their blinds checked after they get their windows installed, or I have to say no, which could potentially send this back to 15%, which is what I don't want also.
I would say, though, the government is not acting as an interior designer. We're not
Why have it
saying
in
you
there?
have to have a certain type of, we're not saying that you need, Bob's types of blinds in a certain color or a certain shape. They just have to effectively block the light. Because a lot of the arguments you made and heard is that window tinting, which we're really debating now, is the blinds are an important part of that. The other thing, it's about compromise. There's a lot of things and a lot of things that come through here that I may not be happy with. But if overall I am, then I'll vote for it. If there's one little minor thing that you don't like and you're going to vote against it, that's your conscience. But you're free to vote however you want.
I've said it before, and I guess I'll say it again. I've said it to many, many people that I've talked to on both sides of this issue. My issue is not with protecting the turtles, and there's nothing in here that says you can't put a darker tint in than what's required. There's nothing here that says you can't do it. But there's nothing in here that also says because you have a 15% and you have 45% and you have to have the right blinds inspected by the town, that's going to guarantee that those blinds are going to be down or the windows won't be open. So we're trying to control what we control, but how far do you really want to go? I mean, what's next? We're going to inspect their lampshade? We got to make sure they don't have a mirror in the right spot that has a reflection off of something that can't be seen? I mean, how far do we want to go? I just think it's something that doesn't necessarily need to be in there.
But the blinds are a logical part of the installation of a window. You put a window in, you do new construction, you put in blinds. It's not, when someone's moving in furniture, it's a different thing altogether. But when you put in a window, you put in blinds. It's right in the same area, it's the same kind of construction. It logically, there's a logical connection between the two.
Could I just ask a practical question, Counselor Veach? So I'm trying to see what the problem is. So you're concerned that someone might build a new home on the beach without any blinds. Wouldn't they then be subjected to the normal enforcement procedures of the town for not protecting their lights?
They would be, but enforcement also has its issues. See, part of the reason why the 50% really makes sense is because, and I disagree with some of the speakers, that what we're doing now is not working. It's simply not working. And anything we can do, this is, you talk about a point, this is my view of a compromise. And I said, this came to me from a builder saying, why don't you just say, because he heard us talking about blinds, why don't you just say that we've got to have blinds in to get the build approved? Came from a builder, didn't come from Turtle Time, didn't come from, some guy in the street, came from a builder.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it, because and as we discuss compromise, let's not forget that the first reading, which passed the council, included a provision that required all new construction to be at 15%, and I supported that. And so this version does not have any impact on new construction, and I understand the principled argument against that. But from a practical standpoint and from an attempt to seek compromise, this seems like a modest step to sort of find some compromise on a bill that's very contentious. And these folks are gonna have to have blinds anyways. You can't live on a new home on the beach without blinds because you're gonna be in violation. So I can't imagine it's gonna adversely affect anybody or impact anybody. So I'm just trying to think through this here. It seems like a reasonable compromise.
You know, Councilor Adderall, my concern is who on town staff is certified and what is gonna be their requirements. We're gonna have to hire someone new to be the inspector of this? What's gonna be acceptable? 50% opacity, 3%, 5%? Does that have to be a total blackout?
Currently, our inspectors aren't on town staff. They're contracted, aren't they, Mr. Hernstedt?
Yes, that's correct, but I didn't hear in Councilor Veach's language that he spoke to the type of blinds, meaning, you know, how permeable and not permeable they are with respect to light. You just spoke to blinds, but I'll let him explain that.
It's just, as someone that came from that industry, there are a lot of different colors, fabrics, opacities that are involved, and to require that someone has to get the approval from town on something that they have to put in that's a decorative feature to their house, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I completely understand why you're trying to put it in there, or why people have said that would be a way to do it, but I just don't think it's a good use of resources. If people have admittedly tried to do their best, I think anybody that lives on this island tries to do their best to do what they can to avoid disorientations. I think we all agree and we all believe that. It's people that don't live here that maybe don't know, or maybe just don't care, and whether or not they have their windows open. They're on vacation, they're gonna leave the window open if they want, and they'll pay the fine. I don't know that, but I just don't think it's fair to the homeowners of our island to require us to sign off on a blind.
Yeah, I think as long as we keep it to blind and without any prescriptive language, which it currently doesn't have, I mean, Councilor Allers, you said that the blinds and the shades are primarily a decorative feature. I don't think that's the case anymore for people who live on the beach. The blind and the shade becomes a critical piece of the puzzle in terms of preventing disorientation. So having a proper blind or shade on your window, because I'm a big proponent, as everybody knows, of personal responsibility, and I think people have an obligation, a responsibility, those who live on the beach, including myself, to live in concert with our marine life. So you need to have shades that are appropriate. You need to have blinds that are appropriate, that are going to do the job if this thing is going to be effective at 45%. So I think without that prescriptive language, I think that should allay some of your concerns. I understand the broader principle, but I think this seems like a reasonable compromise, given that we're going in the direction of, if people act responsibly, shades and blinds will have a dramatic impact on preventing disorientation, coupled with proper enforcement. So I'm, again, personally, I'm comfortable with this as a compromise.
But I would, you know, just to clarify for the town manager, and as you know, you said you've been in the business, and most blinds are rated with a amount of light that they block. In our house, we have the 45% windows, and then we have blackout blinds, which are like 96% blocking. I don't think that's really necessary, but I think that it's probably satisfactory to say that like an 80% or more opacity would be a satisfactory number for a blind when you're on top of a 45% window.
Not to change the subject, but regarding the enforcement aspect of this ordinance, many of the condo folks came in and said, yeah, we're going to do better at making sure that the blinds get closed, and seemed to be in favor of the fact that we were saying, okay, maybe we're not going to have the 15% glass, but we're in favor of you guys at the town doing more enforcement. And so we did. We are still having disorientations, and in addition to that, I've gotten at least 2 letters from condo associations threatening to sue us over our enforcement now. So just so that the folks of the town know that, that's what comes about from the stricter enforcement. We're going to have more lawsuits now. So that's not turning out to be a very good solution either. And I wanted that to be in the record, that we have received these threats of lawsuits, because no one had mentioned that yet.
Okay, and I understand, and I what you're saying, but I think I would like to keep the talk about this amendment, and then once this amendment passes, we can talk about the ordinance.
I thought we were having a general discussion of the entire motion. Part of the motion is that whether we pass this or leave things as they are. So I wanted to have it part of the record that the town had been threatened with lawsuits over this. But I seconded the motion for the amendment. I'm not saying I've changed my mind about that, but I wanted to add to the record.
Vice Mayor Hasselfrost, in your legal, you've got the legal expertise or background. Do you think with this amendment that those lawsuits could potentially go up or go away or neither?
I think that they're not going to go away, no. But I don't think the amendment has anything to do with it. I think the fact that we ratcheted up enforcement, because that's what this council instructed staff to do, was to ratchet up enforcement because of the fact that we thought we were going to be changing the percentage value on the glass. And the ratcheting up enforcement certainly didn't show that the condos were going to go along with us nicely on this issue. They say they want us to have the 45% glass, but yet when we ratcheted up the enforcement, they responded aggressively.
Well, let's not indict all condos on this. It was two that sent that letter. John, could you comment on the seriousness of the claims that of those litigious letters that we received?
Whether or not any entity or property owner decides to file an action against the town, it would be speculative on my behalf to pass judgment on.
John,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm talking about the two that we've already received. The concept that condos, unless the town identifies the specific unit number, the condos would be exempt from the enforcement. Could you comment on the legitimacy of the?
They're not. Okay, so that issue has already been resolved at the staff level, just to make everyone understand and make it clear. The manager and I have already spoken. We've followed up with conversations with Ms. Saunders, and the requirements of the law is that the individual unit owners or the property owner that's causing the violation is the entity that is ultimately responsible for compliance and would be issued a notice of violation. That is not to say that individual condo associations may not be subject to notice of violation if the common element lighting is in violation of this ordinance, as it ultimately either exists today or may get adopted in the future. And that situation would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
So the two letters threatening litigation, they've been resolved. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor, another.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to be clear, the process has been resolved. The letters themselves may not be, because as Mr. Herron said, they received a notice of violation for lighting in units and possibly in their common areas. So the common areas would still be applicable.
I understand. Thank you.
And I guess my question is, if this were to move forward with the requirement to have blinds installed, doesn't say anything about requiring that they be down. If there's still violations, are we going to still be dealing with the same emails that you referred to? Once you put this blinds in, if they have the blinds in, there's just have to install them, they don't have to put them down, or if
The
they are?
reaction is going to be the same no matter what. There are going to be people who don't care, not all condos, as Mr. Adderholt correctly pointed out, but there are going to be people who don't care, and I think they're going to respond aggressively to enforcement, either way.
And I think it's important to point out, speaking about shades in particular, whether they're blackout, 3%, 5%, whatever they are, their intent is to block light from coming in as well as UV index. That's their intent, to block it from coming from the outside in. They're not designed, although they do keep some light from going out, they're not designed that way. They're designed to keep the heat and the heat UV index from coming in. Anyone that has them in their house that faces the sun, when you put it down in the middle of the day, you can feel the heat. You can just feel the temperature change. That's what they're originally designed for. So just keep that in mind as you discuss it.
But they work both ways. I mean, if there's 10% light coming through one way, there's gonna be 10% light going through the other way. They're not a one-way mirror. They're not reflective.
And their purpose is to have down during the daylight hours to prevent that heat and light coming through. And most people if they're not on the beach, most people put them up at night to allow more light in, so they don't have to have so many lights on.
And the only purposes, Dan, is that, and you know, because the alternative to a problem with people not putting their blinds down is having a stronger tint on the windows, which is what this whole ordinance is about. But if someone is renting out a unit or they're in a unit and they don't have blinds, then they can't put the blinds down. So just make sure they have blinds. It's a very simple compromise.
I would just like to respond briefly to the Vice Mayor's comment that with increasing enforcement, which is occurring, I'd be interested in Jed sharing publicly with the numbers. I know Murph has heard the numbers, and it's an encouraging trend of increased enforcement. The Vice Mayor said the condos will respond, and that's where we agree. But how we respond, I think, is a little different. As one who lives in a condo, I can say a year ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago, we got a warning in our condo building, and immediately we had a condo board meeting. The discussion throughout the building was about this warning. Whose unit was it? How do we stop it? How do we respond? And it ratcheted up a sensitivity within the condo. And I think we've seen that throughout the condo community through this debate, which has been quite protracted. The education opportunity of this, I'm sure for some painfully long discussion, has been tremendous in terms of educating and sensitizing not only the condos, but the hotels and the homeowners. And I think once this enforcement ratchets up, and there's a couple fines in a condo, living in a condo community, the word gets around quickly. And I think that could be a very positive thing, not necessarily a negative thing. I'm glad the litigious letters were addressed, and we've worked through that. But for the most part, when you get a couple fines and a couple people get fined in a condo, trust me when I tell you, the word, it's like wildfire, and people are extremely sensitive, and they respond. I've put up flyers throughout our building. People have been very responsive, and I think you're seeing a trend. And again, with increased enforcement, I think condos will respond, but I think they'll respond positively. And in the areas where that doesn't occur, because you have a high turnover rate, whether it be a hotel or a weekly vacation condominium building, and where they just can't ratchet the education level up enough or with enforcement, maybe that's where they put the tinting on. I mean, nobody's preventing them from putting that tinting up. We see the Pink Shells doing it. So, I mean, there are answers, and I think personal responsibility, people will take the appropriate actions. And for those units who can't maintain that high education piece because they have such a high turnover rate, maybe the tinting's a good idea, and maybe they'll go that direction in order to avoid the high enforcement or the increased enforcement activity. So I think this could work. I think we just need to give it a chance.
Quick question for John. If, with the collaboration between the window companies and FWC, should they reach a consensus on a number or a range of number that the tint needs to be in the future, that causes a change to the state statute, we would then be required to change our ordinance to match that, correct? At a bare minimum?
Yes. Once the model ordinance is updated, we would in turn need to update our ordinance.
But in the interim, John, the state mandate would supersede our ordinance anyways, correct?
It's a model ordinance. It's not mandatory.
But just to clarify that point that Councilor Allers was making, one amendment that you could contemplate would be to say that it's going back to the 45 or whatever level the state sets. So let's say you pass 45, going back to 45 today. And tomorrow the state says it's 44. You could put the state standard if it's less in your ordinance, so that it would self-adjust if it does get changed. Is that not correct, John?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, I'm going to ask you to restate your motion again, bearing in mind that it's a little vague right now with just the blind idea. You know, if you want to put down like your bare minimum on what type of blind you're talking about as far as, you know, how thick it has to be or how, I mean, a blind can be a blind. I mean, you could put a sheer up there. It's not going to do any good, right? So you have to put something down there to identify.
Okay, well, just to restate it, I would say that that any window replacement or installation would not be considered complete unless are there blinds installed that, let's say, that block at least 80% of the light.
Mr. Mayor, I just got confused there. When you say any replacement, I thought you were just referring to new construction. Have you expanded the amendment?
I would say any window because they're all windows.
So I thought your original amendment just affected new construction. So this is now all condos? Is that what you're saying? Everybody on the beach?
That replaces a window.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought it was just involving new construction.
And probably most replacements already have blinds. But it's just part of the inspection to make sure there's blinds installed.
Okay,
Because
well,
if there's no blinds installed on a beachfront condo window, that's a problem regardless of whether it's new or it's a replacement.
okay, now I'm starting to have a little challenge here because I thought it was just involving new construction. So just walk me through this again. So if a condo replaces their windows at 45%, as part of that replacement process, they'd have to have the town determine that they had the appropriate shades? Is that what you're saying?
When the window, well, you know, there's an inspector who goes out anyway, right? And inspects the window installation. At that time, they also inspect for blinds. So it's not even a separate visit by the inspector, it's just part of the inspection for the window.
Herein lies my problem with it. That's part of the issue. The other issue is now you're going to put 80%. Is that from the outside in or the inside out? And if it's, I'm assuming from the inside out, how do you measure it? What's the tool they're going to use to measure it? How is it calibrated? All of those questions just come into play. Now you don't get your sign off on your permit because it may or may not be 80% that
No,
allows light through. And if you're standing at the beach, there's no way your eyes are going to be able to tell you if it's 80%, 40%, 10% blockage.
Hey, Dan, you said you're in this business, right? Most blinds have a number that they're rated.
Again,
Like
from the outside in, not from the inside out.
Whatever way that reads.
Unless there's something that I haven't heard of. But that could be possible.
I don't think there's a difference between inside out and outside in.
So if a condo, and we have a real-life example, is going to replace all their windows, there's been one that's been communicating with us that's desperately trying to get some certainty. They're going to replace all their windows. As part of that process now, they're all going to have a blind that doesn't have any specific certification, but just a blind. It seems very vague at this point for replacement. I understand having building a new home that has nothing, but these are condos that some already have shades. I'm sure they'll be able to save them or salvage them as part of the replacement process. So now they're going to have to. I thought, okay, I was under the impression this was just new construction as a compromise, because originally we included new construction as a 15% requirement, which I thought was a fair compromise. Now we're going to involve all replacement windows with this shade requirement. I thought it was just new construction. So I'm unless you can give us a little bit more clarity, Councilor Veach, you're starting to lose me a little bit here. I'm sorry.
You know, I know when I've done window replacements, you know, they do the inspection, there's some things they look at, right? They're looking to make sure you have the correct number of fasteners in. Because I had one time you had to send them back because the guys only did like every other hole instead of every hole, et cetera, et cetera. They come back and they just look to see if there's blinds. As part of that installation, if there's no blinds, if it's a bare window at 45%, that's a problem. So the inspection is really just trying to identify that. And the only reason to put some specificity into it is that if someone could put the sheer privacy blinds and claim that they have them. if they really want to try to game the system.
So what is that specificity, I guess? What's the language?
And I chose 80% because if I remember, like most blinds that I went into that have any darkness at all are over 80%. I think the ones I put in on the beach side of my house are like 96.
So if somebody had blinds that didn't meet those specs and they got the whole condo's replacing the buildings, they would have to tear out those blinds and buy new blinds at the 80% level? Is that what would happen under the ordinance?
Is that all under one permit?
Well, I'd have to defer to, typically it's not. Yeah, it sounds like it's not. So I have to think through that, and I have to defer to Councilor Allers on that because you do have some experience in that area, especially on the replacement side. That throws me a little bit.
I mean, so, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to move this motion along. Do you have something else you want to discuss on it?
No, I think I've said as much as I can.
Okay, Bill, so your motion is to have window coverings of 80% or greater. Am I correct?
Right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I could help, maybe. If you go to your packet, page 25 of 253.
Okay.
It is continuation of section 32105, which is the new language that has been the subject of discussion throughout the process of this ordinance. And I want to point out that this language has always been in the ordinance as it has existed for many years. And that is a requirement that all renovations, to the point of Commissioner Adderholt, Councilmember Adderholt, as well as new construction, are required to submit a lighting plan to confirm compliance with the requirements of this ordinance. And then we get it in subsection E, F, and throughout, and primarily next to subsection K, are, I think, in my opinion, the ones that Councilmember Veach is talking about. And so keeping in mind that a lighting plan has always been required, and that inspection of that in lighting plan and verification that it meets the requirements of this ordinance is a requirement before now a CO can be issued. I would recommend or suggest in 32105 E, F, and K, inclusion of language where starting with E, all non-opaque windows, walls, railings, and doors on the seaward. I would add in, in subsection F, all renovations, retrofitting, and replacement of non-opaque windows. I would insert after windows, blinds/shades. So it's not necessarily the opacity rating of the shades, it's all of the things that are being done, including the 45% or less light transmittance value. All are designed and inspected to decrease and meet the requirement that lighting from any renovated or new unit it meets the requirements of the of this ordinance. So in subsection F and subsection K, again, we would put in blinds/shades.
John, let me ask you a question on that, since you said something there that caught my ear. Renovations, any basic renovation would be a window install, correct? So if someone replaces a window, that could be considered a renovation. That would trigger a lighting plan be submitted to the town for approval, correct? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what the ordinance reads currently, or was proposed in subsection F. All renovations, retrofitting, and replacement of non-opaque windows, walls, railings, and doors on the seaward and shore perpendicular sides of structures, blah, blah, blah. That's what triggers the requirements to now meet the 45% or less opacity requirement.
But I'm referring to directly what you said about a lighting plan. So if it's considered a reservation, doing replacement windows, and you have to, even on a renovation of an existing condo, have to provide the town with a lighting plan that has to be approved, what would be the need to add the blinds? If the town is approving the lighting plan to make it necessary to protect the turtles, why would you need the blinds?
Well, the blinds are part or can be part of the tools available to the property owner. Maybe the property owner wants to go with something less than 45% window tinting, but if they augment that with shades and the shades or the blinds together with the opacity rating of the glass, accomplishes the requirements of the ordinance, now they're in compliance.
And I will disagree with you on that point. My opinion is this would not be giving any options to the homeowner. This would be giving options to the town. So now we get to tell you essentially what blinds you get, what lights you use. It doesn't give the homeowner more options. It gives the town enforcement options, in my opinion, by adding that wording.
Roger, is there somebody here from enforcement that could opine as to how they would view that, given John's suggestion? Or
So the primary review of the lighting plan typically is, do you meet the tinting criteria if we have one? And do you have any exterior lights or modifications to exterior lights that are being impacted? You have two situations. You have condominiums that kind of replace things in mass and usually phased, but usually mass, so they're doing multiple units, either railings or outdoor lighting or windows, or maybe a combination of those three things if they're, want to minimize the disruption to the unit owner. So we're looking at the lighting plan. We don't really look at the interior lighting plan, other than if you're doing electrical work on the interior of your unit. As it stands right now. Someone comes in and says they're replacing a window, we don't look at how many ceiling fixtures or table lamps or reading lamps or other types of lights they have inside their house. We're just really looking at the window and the tinting and other things directly applicable to the window or door.
if I could just briefly ask Chad. Chad, has it been your experience that as you see violators out there, is it been your experience, are the violators primarily because they don't have the proper blind or shade or a blind or shade, or is it because they're not properly closing the blind and shade that they have? Don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it's an important question.
Morning, everyone. Chad Schutz. So in the past, just over the 3 years that I've been working here, I have had houses where we did a CO. Shades were not installed yet, and there
What's a CO?
Completion.
Okay.
Yeah, certificate of completion. So yeah, that has been an issue where you have a new house, they didn't install shades. It's, lights are left on by contractors doing work later on, and lights coming down on the beach. So to Councilman Veach's point, that has been an issue.
With new construction?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But, and I don't want to put you on the spot again, but you're saying it's a problem with new construction, not necessarily replacement windows?
That's where I've observed it, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Now, one thing I would do, just for the sake of ease of enforcement, is just say that any blinds, and just assume that nobody's gonna game the system, and just put up to be vindictive and put up something sheer and doesn't block any light.
That actually helps me.
All right. Why don't you restate the motion one more time, and we'll get this behind us.
Just a question for you, John. So if we just add blinds into F and, where was it? K, will that require blinds, or that's just, was that just say that if you're gonna put up blinds now that you have to have some kind of special inspection?
Well, it accomplishes, I believe, what your intent, which is if you are going to put up blinds, then they have to be approved before the efficacy of the blinds needs to be inspected and verified before a CO is issued. Again, it is up to the individual unit owner or property owner to decide whether or not they want to include blinds as part of their solution to complying with this ordinance.
Okay, now, but as I was just, talking here with Councilman Adderholt, the idea is instead of having to have the blinds rated by some kind of standard that may cause a problem, particularly for previously installed blinds, just to state that blinds must be installed.
Again, it's if you want to require mandatory blinds, then it needs to be written that specific. If it is property owner, we leave it up to you how to get to compliance. Then blinds can be one of several means to get to that point. The idea is if someone puts in 45% opacity glass, as is currently being written, then do they need to put in blinds? We leave it up to them. Then ultimately, again, before the CO is issued, staff does the inspection, which is primarily going out onto the beach at night and telling the property owner, okay, turn on all the lights inside your unit or your home, and can we see it from the beach? Would it cause a turtle disorientation possibly? And if it does, then go back to that property owner and say, well, you need to take additional steps because there's still non-compliance. And that at that point in time may include putting in blackout blinds.
Okay, well, I'm trying to go the other way with this, John, just to make it simple, is to say that when you replace a window, during the inspection, there's got to be blinds installed, and when you put in a new window, there's got to be blinds installed, but leave it up to the homeowner exactly what they're going to put on their window. So I don't think that goes in with the modifications you were suggesting. I'm just guessing that's not the place to put them.
No.
Okay, so then to say that blinds must be installed before we get a CO or approve a permit, that would just be part of the ordinance then? The ordinance header, or would that have to be laid out somewhere in the?
We will have to find the spot for it in the ordinance.
Okay, then I'm going to restate my motion just to say that for any new windows or replacement windows, that before approval of the inspection for a CO or closing the permit, that there must be blinds installed.
Is that okay, seconder?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just don't want to belabor this any longer, but both Roger and John, given what Councilor Veach has just proposed, is it as simple as he says it is, in that if for anyone who replaces or puts in new windows on the island, they'd be required to have some kind of blind, period. Is that in essence what we're doing here today?
As I understand, Commissioner Beaches, yes.
And Councilor Allers, is the term blind correct in the industry? Is it blind/shade? What's the lingo these days?
Well, there's blinds, shades, shutters, silhouettes, there's all kinds of things.
Well, window coverings, maybe.
Window treatments?
I think window coverings is pretty generic.
Can they use drapes instead of blinds?
But wouldn't a drape be considered a window covering?
Just asking.
I'd like to use the right language here. This is sausage making at its finest this morning. But I think it is important.
I'm okay to state it as window coverings. Is that a binding term?
Yes, because I'm not told, I understand that to mean covering the window, not the treatments around the window. So, whether you have decorative fabrics or other things around the window, a valance or don't have a valance, irrelevant, window covering. Cover the window.
So I would modify the blinds to say window coverings.
All right, the definition of a number of the online dictionaries, as window covering definition, material including blinds, shades, curtains, and shutters used to cover a window for the purpose of controlling sunlight, providing additional weatherproofing, ensuring privacy, or for aesthetic reasons. So I think window covering is.
Can you reread that, John? Because there's one important thing that's in there that I want to make sure people hear it.
Material, including blinds, shades, curtains, and shutters used to cover a window for the purpose of controlling sunlight, providing additional weatherproofing, ensuring privacy, or aesthetic reasons.
Okay. Are you good with the changes, seconder?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll call the question.
It's a roll call vote.
It's a roll call vote on the amendment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not an amendment.
Not the amendment.
He made a motion that included an amendment.
Oh, is your
We're not voting on an amendment.
Oh, I thought we were just voting on the amendment.
It's the ordinance as amended.
The ordinance as amended.
Are we voting on the ordinance as amended or to put the amendment into the ordinance?
My understanding was that the motion you made was the ordinance with an amendment.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well.
I thought the motion was to amend the ordinance.
Right.
If you
Very
move
important
the
distinction.
ordinance, then you don't have an amendment. It's an ordinance with an amendment. You move the whole thing.
Okay.
All right, in that case, we will have a roll call vote. Councilman Allers?
No.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, yes. Councilman Adderholt?
Yes.
Councilman Veach?
No.
You voted against your own motion. Just to
I
make-
voted no, I wanted the amendment,
Just to make it
but the
exciting.
motion itself, and we've done this before, where someone has made a motion to amend it and then voted against it.
Okay. The motion carries with Councilman Allers and Veach dissenting.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may just briefly, I want to, for anybody that may be reporting on this out there, the reason I voted no was not to move it back to 45%. It was because I do not believe that amendment should be added. I just wanted to make it clear.
And I'd like to make a point that I think that's still wrong. I think that we are now up to the 20% disorientations. People come in here and say what we're doing is working, that the enforcement and communication and education is working. It's simply not. We had, and I know the votes already happened, but we had disorientations in that 17, 20, 29, 38, and 45. And in that case, there were some that were multiple disorientations towards condos. What we're doing is not working. It's really just it's a complete violation of our duties to look after these helpless endangered species for a matter of convenience. And people who complain about the 15% leaving in darkness, we haven't had one person come in who've had 15% glass installed and complain.
All right.
I know the vote's already happened.
Yeah, it has, and we're going to move on. The next item is the variance 2022-0031, which is 177 Hercules Drive. This was to consider variance 2022-0031 for 177 Hercules Drive, allowing two variances for setbacks for a new garage and porch. We all got, the manager's gone. We all got information from the applicant, Madam Clerk, that they've withdrawn their applications.
Yes, sir.
So what's the procedure here, John? Do we have to, is there anything we have to do?
I had hoped that this would have been announced when you approved your agenda, but you don't have to do anything.
Okay.
Staff has considered the application withdrawn and taken off the agenda.
Very good. Okay, well, for one reason or another, it was left on there, so, okay, I'm gonna suggest that we take a 5-minute break. Is everybody all right with that? Yeah? Okay. All right, we'll come back at 11:10 or so. or 15. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Everybody's here. We'll plow into the administrative agenda. And the first item on that is the stabilization of archaeological resources at the Mound House. This is to approve a capital project from the general fund in the amount of $43,967.28 for the Florida Museum of Natural History to provide archaeological services for the stabilization of the underground museum, quote, "Stories Beneath Our Feet," end quote, exhibit at the Mound House. Is there a motion to approve this capital outlay here at the Mound House?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I kind of read through some of this, but I know that it seems that this pool has been kind of structurally, I guess, dicey for a while. I mean, because you guys did this some years ago, right? Or is it something different? Sorry, I'm looking at Allison.
Come forward and explain the project.
Allison Geeson, Director of Cultural Resources, Parks and Recreation. Since I have been there 8 years, the underground exhibit, because it is earth and because we are on a barrier island, continues to move. So with our weather episodes, especially with Irma and full moon, and we had Elsa last year, the archaeological resource has been a threat for some time now. So it's something I've been working on, and I'm very excited to say that we have an agreement to move forward. So
Now, is this to preserve the archaeological part of it, or is it structural to make sure it's safe for people?
this is the first step to preserve the archaeological resource, because if it continues, that information will be lost. And so it's the first out of 2 steps to do that. The next step would be to address the wall, but we really need to address the units prior to addressing the stabilization of the wall.
I see.
Any other questions? Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? The motion carries unanimously. Next item is fiscal year '23 contractual agreements. This is to approve purchase orders contracts in excess of $25,000 for fiscal year 2023 in the areas of environmental services, planning, zoning, building services, and community development administration, together with such changes as may be acceptable to the town manager and approved as to form and legality by the town attorney, and authorize the town manager to execute the agreements on behalf of the town. Is there a motion to approve these purchase order contracts in excess?
So moved.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Discussion?
Roger, if you could indulge me for a minute. It seemed like for a while we had an issue with building permits, and then that went away for a while, and now it seems to be back where people seem to be waiting longer than usual to get these permits processed. Can you let the people listening know why that is, and what we're doing to try to speed that up?
Yes, before I went to the League of Cities conference late last week, I had my weekly meeting with the community development staff, and they informed me that they had 64 permit applications. Now, we can't control the incoming flow. So when we have a spike like that, what we do is we reach out to the very same people on this contract and ask them to add additional resources to meet the workload demands. But of course, they don't have people sitting around doing nothing either. They're all businesses, and they bring people on as quickly as they can to meet the need, but it does take them a little time to identify and find people with the proper skill sets to be able to come in and help us. So you have a little lag till we get the resources, actually working on those applications. But we've authorized overtime, and we're letting people do work on the weekend, take home work on the weekends, and try to knock back the backlog, if you will.
Because we've seen, it seems to me that we're seeing a lot more building, a lot more renovations, people are infusing a lot more money into the island. Has there been any discussions, or maybe we need to have a discussion about potentially bringing some of these services in-house under the town's umbrella versus contracting it out? Just a suggestion to my fellow
Well,
councilors.
that's clearly within, could be a budget discussion for you all to have. you know, as we move forward with this year's budget. But let me just generally say this. If we hire a person and we have a spike just like we have in this case here that you're alluding to, Counselor, for us to hire another person, it's going to take double or triple the time that a company could reallocate or find a resource for us to augment that. So even if we did hire a person, we still have to have companies standing behind them for these types of peaks beyond our in-house staff capability.
And I understand that. I'm just wondering if it would make sense to have someone that oversees that entire thing that is a actual town employee. And if you have to outsource things because of spikes, I completely understand. It's just a thought for a future discussion.
Yeah, just as a general rule, we keep a lot of our positions sort of open and advertised out there in case someone comes along who we feel would be a good addition to the staff. And then if we find that individual, then we look at that very same point that you're making.
Okay, any further discussion? Any objection to the motion? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is supplemental magistrate. The staff has requested that we add on an additional magistrate. We've all been provided the information for the magistrate. Does anybody wish to make a motion to get this discussion going?
So moved.
Move to approve the magistrate, the position.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
You just want to make sure that people that may not see it, one of the line items on our blue sheet, it does says, this will not increase the budget for the special magistrate. It will speed up the compliance. Just wanna make
That's a true statement. Obviously, we put it on the paper. The reason for that is that the amount of time it takes to process the cases remains the same whether we have 1, 2, 3, or 7 magistrates. What the situation is, as described on the blue sheet, is that our current magistrate is on the East Coast. And the time and effort to bring her here on a monthly basis to deal with 1 or 2 cases is just not productive for her or for us. So that's why we thought having a Southwest Florida attorney who is experienced in handling these types of matters to be available for those caseloads when it's not, because if we have 2 cases and they're not heard, the enforcement is pushed out a minimum of a month, if not longer, because usually the magistrate gives the person time to comply after that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that this wasn't increasing the budget. It was simply just making the process smoother and faster.
It'll help us bring the case to a head quicker and hopefully gain compliance quicker.
And my quick question is that the rates are the same as for our other magistrate.
That's correct, ma'am.
And just for public's information, just so they don't think this is some pal of somebody's, the person that you're proposing, their present occupation is Special Magistrate for Collier County Code Enforcement Division, is that correct?
My understanding, that's why we put him on the list.
Thank you.
Okay, and that gentleman is Patrick Neal, and he's here. We heard from him earlier. But, and he is local. He's down in North Naples and so forth, and of course, as was stated, he's a magistrate down in Collier County. So, that'll certainly be a welcome addition. Now, is there any other discussion?
Could we, Mr. Mayor, just have him introduce himself and his background, just so the public can see this person who?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we heard, I was thinking of somebody else. I'm sorry, Patrick. I didn't mean to slight you.
My pleasure, no.
Yeah.
Patrick Neal, I'm an attorney, and as was noted, I'm the current special magistrate for code enforcement in Collier County. I've been an attorney practicing here in Southwest Florida for 35 years. I've been here since 1986. I've been a member of the Florida Bar longer than that. I don't even want to talk about how long I've been a member of the Florida Bar. But I was the attorney for the Collier County Contractor Licensing Board for 15 years, and I've been very involved in code enforcement and general administrative law matters. So that's sort of my brief resume of background. If anybody has any questions, certainly be more than happy to answer them.
Mr. Neal, how do you view the role of the special magistrate in a municipality such as Fort Myers Beach?
I view the role of a special magistrate as someone who's a neutral arbiter of fact and law to ensure compliance with the ordinances as they meet. We have to make sure people get due process so that they have a fair hearing on everything, but that the primary goal of the Code Enforcement Department of Code Enforcement Special Magistrate is to ensure compliance with the laws and ordinances. It is not my role to second guess or judge any ordinance that's passed by the council. My role is to interpret those ordinances based upon the facts as they're presented. It is not to make my decision or push my feelings about an ordinance one way or the other on anything. So that's basically my role.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Neal? Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. So the motion is to bring on Mr. Neal as a supplemental magistrate. It's been discussed. No further discussion. Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is the 2022 Canvassing Board. This is to appoint a member of the Town Council to serve on the Canvassing Board for the Town of Fort Myers Beach, November 8, 2022 general election. It's my understanding that this person would serve also with the town manager and
Town clerk.
town clerk, yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm
Yes,
willing to volunteer for this if no one else.
I think it says here, you're
She's not running.
she's
Not
not
running.
running, okay.
Yeah, she's qualified.
I'm not only, yeah, and,
She'll still be seated.
yes.
Well, I have no problem with the vice mayor doing that.
I don't either.
I think it's a great idea.
Yep. Everybody okay? Congratulations, Vice Mayor, you're a canvasser. Okay.
Besides, you're gonna have a big vacation after that, so you might as well work
That's right.
hard at it.
Okay, that's that. The LPA and the historic preservation, we've already made those. Okay, final public comment. Doesn't look like there's anybody left, so we'll move on. Town managers items.
So, Mr. Mayor and members of the town council, it's my understanding that the Florida Department of Transportation has reached out to each of you individually to have a meeting with respect to the state of their project, which on San Carlos Boulevard and the bridge, and now incorporates the foot of the bridge. And one of the comments that I had heard from one of the members of council was that FDOT was looking for us to make a commitment and/or resolve the outstanding issue that they show as outstanding with regard to the future landscape maintenance of the foot of the bridge. So I think it's important that you see the language that they're proposing, which is in your kit, and understand staff's concern and possibly the town attorney's concern about liability with respect to how we fit into this arrangement and what our potential liability would be. So with that, if you have any questions or want any further details, I'll be happy to provide those.
Any questions for Roger about?
Roger, I thought you had a proposed I'm sorry, I thought you had a proposed solution for this that you were gonna talk about today, or did I misunderstand?
Well, I could tell you what position I've expounded to FDOT on this, which is that FDOT find a way to contract with us, and so in a form that unless we make a grievous error, we're not liable, or to contact with Lee County, who is inevitably who's going to be the sort of the owner of this facility once it's built, and our arrangement with Lee County would be that if they can't finalize an agreement with Margaritaville, who has volunteered to take on the landscape maintenance, or some other reason they're uncomfortable with that we would pay the county the cost of maintenance, which is not significant in the way of maintenance. I mean, the cost of the maintenance is not significant. The liability is significant in my viewpoint.
I would just say, just to comment, I think it's critical that the town plays an active role in that particular parcel, that particular piece of land. The vegetation that the town is, or that the state is willing to plant on behalf of this program will be not only aesthetically pleasing, because I understand the county's just going to put grass if we don't take action. I think the state has a plan that is, again, not only aesthetically pleasing, but also that they'll utilize that vegetation to direct pedestrian traffic to walk in the appropriate crosswalks as opposed to crossing illegally, which, as we all know, delays traffic. So I would certainly support the town utilizing funds to cover the cost. If a contract with Marguerite, I understand your liability concerns, but in terms of the cost of maintaining the vegetation, if a deal can't be reached with Margaritaville, which was, again, a very kind offer on their part, but if that can't be reached, I think that's certainly a modest cost that the town should take on, as opposed to just having grass in that really visible area of Fort Myers Beach.
Well, plus, looking at the drawings from FDOT, is that island now has no crossing points. The main vegetated island, and so putting vegetation there will discourage people from crossing at that point, which is important. But if if you have no agreement, we put grass, then people will probably cross. And I have no problem even with us paying for maintenance to beautify the town. But I think that the town taking liability for something that we don't own and didn't design, I think is just a bridge too far for me.
Right.
Okay.
Roger?
So what we can do is bring back a resolution which would state that the council authorizes the manager to do the following, and will prioritize those alternatives, A, B, and C, and we'll, assuming that's voted and approved, we'll take the associated administrative actions.
And also talking to them, I thought they were under a pretty rapidly approaching deadline for funding for that.
Well, I think that if you're concerned about that, clearly you can make an instruction or a motion today.
I think what they, as I understood it, they were interested in that letter of interest. There was a time sensitivity piece to that. So
That letter as crafted would have to be changed. Assuming the hierarchy that I suggested to you.
whatever we need to do to keep the ball moving forward, I would.
Well, if you want to direct me to go forward with, we'll be glad to enter into a maintenance agreement with the state that we would only be liable if we do something that's grievously wrong. And if that can't be done, and if the property is going to be fall to the county for maintenance, if they decide not to enter into agreement with Margaritaville, that the Lee County would maintain it with their own forces or a private contractor, and we would pay for the maintenance.
I'm comfortable with that.
Now, did you mention before that maybe we or TBI could pay for this, but then leave it for the county to actually do the maintenance?
But we'd be paying the county the cost of the maintenance. We wouldn't be doing it. So let's just say whether they paid Margaritaville or had to pay for their own staff or paid for a contractor, they would tell us those costs and we would pay for it.
The state's going to pay for the plantings themselves.
It's just the maintenance.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's my understanding, and maybe I was misunderstanding what they were telling us, is that if the county is to maintain it, whether we pay for it or not, that they will not go with the FDOT's plan for the plantings. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement?
I don't believe so. I think what the county's position has been, at least the way it's been explained to me by FDOT, is that the county is reticent about contracting directly with Margaritaville. So they've asked to contract with us and have us contract with Margaritaville. And I'm uncomfortable with being in the middle of that arrangement. So our position, I think, to best protect the interests of the town is either we contract with FDOT. If that doesn't happen, and it's true that the county does not want to directly contract with Margaritaville, that the county assume the maintenance and we will pay for the maintenance, whether it's done by their own staff or they hire a private contractor, ABC Landscaping.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, based on the drawings that we saw with the vegetation that's gonna go in there versus just the grass, it's a liability issue, obviously, from everybody, from the state, the county, and from us. So if no one wants to, maybe John, this is a question for you, as a liability issue, what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, how do we get from what we want to see versus what has been told that is gonna be put in, should we not reach an agreement? So if we don't want to accept the liability, TPI probably doesn't want to accept the liability, and can't speak for them, but, or the county or the state, where does that leave us?
Well,
As far as what gets
well,
planted?
let's start with FDOT designed it, so they designed it, so on day one, they're liable because they designed it. And through the next 2 years of the maintenance warranty, they're responsible for it.
1 year.
So 2 years and 1 day, someone has to take that over. My understanding from Lee County was a cost issue. Now, if it's, I don't want to do it issue, I can't help us there. But if it was, so I was working us around the issue, it's a cost issue. They don't want to pay for the maintenance, and they don't want to be, and that's why we found Margaritaville as at that point, a volunteer person, so it wouldn't cost them anything. With that, they said they wanted us to be a conduit to Margaritaville. That has some ramifications that you can discuss with Mr. Herron. And I said, well, I don't want to be in the middle of the arrangement. I don't want to be, playing telephone where person A calls me, I have to call person B and then call person C. So I said that the best alternative for the town then is that if the county doesn't want to contract directly with Margaritaville, fine. Then we will they can either do the maintenance with their own staff, and if their own staff is too busy because they have other work commitments, then they could just hire a contractor, ABC Contracting, and they pay the contractor, they send us a copy of the invoice, and we pay them. Done deal.
I guess,
But if they just want to find a reason to go to grass, I can't help that situation.
well, perhaps the quickest way to get to a solution, if my fellow council members would agree with me, is to direct our town manager to reach out to the county manager to have a conversation as to the fastest, best approach to it, so that we can continue to move forward, because I agree with Councilman Veach that it was very adamant that they're at a time crunch as far as getting the funding to be able to do it. They have to ask for the funding. So the longer we take to come up with a decision one way or another, we could lose that opportunity to get that planting that I think we all would like to see there. So I would like to.
Send the same letter to both and follow up with the conversation, there's no problem with that.
You know, I'm a phone guy, so I'd prefer a phone call to say, what are your intentions? And then at least we can make a reasonable decision based on, this is what I was told.
Want me to call them first? I'd be happy to do that.
Now, the question, Councilman, are you willing to assume the liability of that section in order to have the vegetation there?
I would not personally, no. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. We need to figure that problem out first before we can really.
The more direction we can give to the town manager, so if he's talking to the county town manager and saying, no, the deal is you have to accept the liability, then we've already given him some guidance.
But I personally believe it's important to find out between the two managers what the course of direction is going to be. I don't feel comfortable just saying, if he says this, do that. If he doesn't say this, don't do anything or bring it back to us. I would prefer to know the county is willing to do this or they're not. And I would think that the county manager would have a read on the commissioners as to what the comfortability would be to enter into agreement with TPI or not enter into agreement with TPI. I'm just trying to get some more clarification.
Haven't you had those discussions already, Roger?
I was already told the county would not enter into an agreement with TPI. I was told that black and white.
Okay, so then where does that leave us? With the grass, right?
No.
No,
It leaves us into choosing if we want to be liable for what gets planted there then.
No,
No.
no.
Somebody's
Well,
gotta assume liability.
So if the county holds to that position that they don't want to contract with Margaritaville, private entity, to do the maintenance as a sort of, adopt the road type concept, then the county can, like they would any other road or facility that they own, would contract, either perform the maintenance themselves or hire a contractor, ABC Contracting, Landscaping, to do the maintenance for them. In this case, to avoid we don't want to take on the additional expense, we would pay for it. So there's really no need for them to go to grass under that scenario.
Right. If their justification for not doing it is monetary, then we can do that. But if it's liability, if the county just wants to get rid of liability of that area, then that's really the simple question as I see it.
And I think to Councilor Allers' point, that's a quick phone call to figure that out. But having said that, I think if it comes to that and the county doesn't want to assume liability, I think that's something we should know, because I think that would be something we would want to talk to our county commissioners about, because that's such an important piece of real estate for our town. And just to let that go to grass for the reasons we've already talked about, I would think the county commissioners would be open to assuming liability for a road that is already the county road. So I'm hoping it's a cost issue and we can just get this thing resolved, because I don't mind the town incurring that cost, because it's a key piece of real estate for the town.
Councilor Idaho, I'm kind of looking at it like the Arches. So the arrangement with the Arches is that the Arch Group is raising money for the Arches, and then the county's going to use that money and build and install them. So the Arch Group doesn't have ongoing liability, they're just paying for that. So I'm kind of looking at it with the same lens.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I just think Councilor Zeller's point is just get on the phone and just have a friendly conversation and see if we can work it out, but whatever we gotta do.
And it sounds like it's also kind of our preferred template for things like street lighting on the county road. That if, we don't want to assume liability for the road by putting the lights down. If we can have the county do it and we help them financially, then that's a better alternative. So I think the two kind of go together.
Roger, do you know where we are? Do you feel you have a consensus?
Well, yeah, I think I'm going to call the county administration, a manager or assistant manager over this area, and have a discussion and let him know what the council's preferred outcome is. We would prefer to avoid grass, and to accomplish that, we're willing to do any one of the three things I laid out.
Okay.
Okay, next item.
Okay, the next item, we are constantly looking for ways to accumulating points for the community rating system, and the folks in charge of that change the items that you can qualify points from review to review. So anytime there's an opportunity for us to gain points, we're always looking for that. And plus, a multi-jurisdictional public information program is always good to work with our partners whenever we can. So to qualify for the points, we have to raise this as an issue at a public meeting, and have the council endorse the fact that we would be doing our joint public information effort. And Kristen Schumacher handles that for us, and if there's any more details you would like to hear about that, she'd be glad to provide them to you.
Come on up, Kristen.
Hello.
Good morning.
So basically, per the PPI resolution that we adopted in April, on page 40, it is a requirement for us to give you the annual report from 2021 and for you to review it.
Any questions for Kristen?
I guess my question would be for Roger. Are we going to be substituting Jason for Chelsea's spot under the public members?
Probably Jason and Kristen,
Okay, just figured that was the case, but wanted to verify.
yes.
I found it all very interesting, and of course, we want to continue to participate in this.
I agree. Keep those insurance rates as low as possible.
I agree also.
Yep.
You have consensus.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, I'd like to just go back to one of the public comments. I'm sorry the person who made it is not here any longer, but I think they said some things that are worthy of clarification.
Okay.
So, the LPA is asked to comment on our capital improvement program, our 5-year plan. So what that involves is projects, location, and timing. Those are the 3 things that they opine on. Project that they see that's being proposed that's not needed, project that isn't being proposed that they feel is needed, where's the best place to site that project, site A versus B versus C, and when to implement the project to meet the goals of the comp plan. That's what their role is. So we give them the information that we have in May, which I admit is early in the budget process. Because we need to set a tentative millage with you all in early June, and then we actually complete our budget development over in July. So, if they feel that they want to take a second look at that, best to my knowledge, there's 30 days, 30 calendar days between now and when the budget is finalized, which means there's 20 working days. So they could have 1 or more meetings if they feel there's a need to have further discussions of the budget if they so wish. But again, I remind them it's limited to the capital improvement element, and it's only limited to those things, whether a project is needed or not needed, or where it's located. Should we put a new water tower on site A versus site B? And when does it need to be implemented to meet the comp plan? So to the extent they have additional input on those issues, I'm sure I would welcome it, and I'm sure you would as well. The other thing that they mentioned to me is that they wanted the staff to review the side setbacks. I thought I heard that because of some variances that are coming in. And we knew variances were going to come in because we knew that there were certain properties that were caught somewhat in the process, that they started their project, but they didn't get their project to the point where it could be approved administratively. But to the extent that if the council feels that there's a need after you see these variances or something to be relooked at, of course, you can direct me and I will direct staff to relook at it. The LPA doesn't direct anybody to do anything. They just make recommendations. So I just want to be clear about that. And they said something about eliminating a field, and I don't know where that came from, but we have no plans to eliminate any fields as part of our redevelopment of Bay Oaks. So just so people don't leave in the meeting without having a better understanding of those issues.
Yeah, I don't know where that business came from about the fields. That kind of caught me off guard too, but that's the first I'd heard about that. But anyhow, is there anything else, Roger?
No, I just wanted to make sure that, those questions didn't go unanswered.
Okay.
I think another point that he made was that, he wanted to know where the money from the fee increases for Bay Oaks were going, and it's pretty obvious that they're staying at Bay Oaks.
Right, so the short version is that right now, let's assume that we don't do any fee increases and we don't augment the budget Bay Oaks' budget would have a shortfall and services or hours would have to be reduced. So our options are to give it more money, and there are two ways to give it more money. One is from increasing taxpayer support, and the other way is to adjust the fees. Or as I said, the alternative would be to reduce services. So, concerning the fact that the fees have been changed in 10 years, year after year needs for more operating money, achieved our 75-25 split that we were aspiring to. Seems like an appropriate time to look at the fees. So we appreciate BORCAB's hard work in doing that and making adjustments that they feel are reasonable considering the circumstances.
Okay. We'll move on. Town Attorney. John, do you have anything?
Nothing, just thank you for allowing me to appear by Zoom. Have any questions about anything, you know how to get a hold of me, but purpose of brevity, that's it.
Brevity, I like that.
Looks good on the silver screen there. Okay, council members' items. We'll start with you, Councilman Veach.
I've got nothing.
Councilman Adderholt,
Nothing additional.
Vice Mayor.
Well, the thing that happened today where I asked to move the committee appointments up, that's happened with us on a regular basis, and we've been encouraging folks to show up and speak when we're asking to appoint them. So it just seems that putting it in the administrative agenda is not a good spot. I would suggest that we modify and add appointments to advisory committees, items, reports, and/or appointments up at the beginning of the agenda. It seems like a logical place to put it. That way folks come, they don't have to stay for the whole meeting.
I like it.
Is there any reason not to do that, Roger?
No, sir.
Okay, let's do that then. Good point. Anything else, Vice Mayor?
No, thank you.
Councilman Allers.
Just one thing. I had a meeting last week with the owner of the beach bar, who's got some concerns with the house that was tore down next door to his establishment. So I met him over there and we walked around, and it appears that there's still a bunch of asbestos siding sitting on that site. I don't know if they were required to go through the proper stuff to take that house down and get rid of that asbestos siding, but there are very large chunks of siding still sitting in the sand, is one of the issues. The other issue he has is the drainage, the way that it drains to between his property and that property. Sometime during COVID, when it was shut down, there was a dune planted on the back of that vacant property. Where it used to be flat, it has now grown 3 feet, which has grown into his property, and now the drainage goes directly into his building, whereas it used to go out to the beach and out to the Gulf like it has done forever. He said he's tried to reach out to the town, and he's not getting any help or any callbacks. So if it's possible to at least reach out to him, and maybe somebody could meet him, have a discussion, and
My number or have.
I'd be happy to meet anybody out there as well, because you can blatantly see it's an issue, and when it rains, and he was told he can't do anything to allow that dune to allow the water to run the way it is, so he's kind of stuck in a pickle. So I told him I would bring it up at the meeting today, and hopefully we can meet with him to see if we can
Meet
come up
you
with-
out there with him, or
Okay.
have him call me, whatever is best, quickest conduit.
All right, I'll get with you after the meeting, then, and we'll set up a time.
Anything else?
That is it.
Geez, how do you get that job to do the site inspections at the bars on a, what was it, Friday afternoon, late?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay, all right. I just have the one item that I brought up earlier about what CellCab had voted on and passed, the recommendation of naming the Dan and Ann Hughes Loop down there at the Mount House. And it didn't make the agenda today, although it was supposed to. For whatever reason, it was missed. And so I just want to have, I don't know, John, are you still there? Is
Yes,
this
sir.
something that was going to have to come back to us in a resolution form or something like that? Or can we vote today to move this along, and then?
You
if-
can vote for us to order to sign and bring the resolution back for ratification at your next meeting, if that's your comfort level.
Is that all right with everybody?
What you're asking is, can we get it done today? Is that what you're asking?
Well,
'Cause I'm comfortable with that.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that since it's not on the agenda today, let's just assume it gets approved in September, then it's gonna be 2, 3 weeks till you order to sign or whatever, versus if you tell us today, green light it today, we'll order to sign today, and you could ratify the resolution at your next meeting.
And my point, my reason for that is not so much to move everything along so quickly, but I want to be able to notify the family to give them time to make arrangements, travel arrangements, whatever they have to do to come down, you know, if there's a ceremony of sorts. So that's really my reasoning. So if we can do that, if we can vote on approving this and ratifying it at the next meeting, that would, seems to me that would solve the problem.
Yeah, and I've got no problem with go ahead and ordering the sign now, if that helps move things along.
Okay?
Agreed.
Yeah, I would too.
Agree as well.
So we don't need to vote, that's good enough. Okay,
You should have pretty good confidence.
very good. All right. That's all I have, except to report that I was over at the Florida League of Cities Convention last week over in Hollywood. It was the 100th anniversary of the Florida League of Cities, and it was a big deal. The town manager was there as well with his bride. And as always, it's a great thing to go to. I recommend to my fellow council members, you know, next chance you get, you should really go to these. It's very inspiring. There are a lot of great sessions to go to and so forth, and not to mention all of our peers that you get to meet over there and speak with and so forth. So anyhow, it was a great weekend, and I'm glad to be back on the beach. So anyhow, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, no objection. We're adjourned at 11:55. Thank you.
The sausage is complete.
Yes.
Put it on the grill.
Could have been worse.